my presentation, right? You see the
Yes,
Okay, cool. Okay,
correct.
that's the first step. Okay. So
Okay.
hello everybody. My name's Dr. David Schaefer. I'm assistant dean in the graduate school at North Carolina State University. I've been here at NC State for 34 years now. I got my undergrad degree in political science at UNC Chapel Hill, another good school, even though we're kind of rivals on the football field and basketball and stuff like that. And I got my master's in political science here and my PhD in public administration here at NC State. Um, Today, what I'm going to do is talk about how, as the title says, how to get paid for going to graduate school, how to finance your graduate education, questions to ask, different kinds of funding. And I will take questions at the end, although I might leave a couple breaks kind of in the middle as well. Like Heba said, save up your questions and we'll get to them for sure. So I'm going to go to the first slide. Um, there are several different types of funding available for graduate school. And this is pretty much universal across, different graduate programs at all universities. There are teaching assistantships and research assistantships, okay? And those are service awards where you work a certain number of hours per week for a faculty member in your graduate program, and you get paid to do that, okay? Research assistantships, when you're looking for a graduate school, especially for a doctoral program or a research-based master's program, you'll be selecting that school in large part because of the faculty member with whom you want to work. And that faculty member will generally have a grant and they will appoint you as a research assistant on that grant. Okay. Teaching assistantships, as the title indicates, teaching related duties. So you get paid to, it might be you're teaching a class, proctoring a lab course, lab section, might be that you're grading papers. It just depends on your experience. Okay. Research and teaching assistantships, and also I put administrative assistantships in here just because, like in our office, we have jobs available that are not related to teaching or research that are for graduate students, and we call those assistantships as well. You're basically engaged in administrative duties. Okay. Teaching assistantships, research assistantships in general, they're going to come with a stipend, okay? And a stipend is your take-home pay. So that's what you take home. You use to pay for your food, your housing, entertainment, whatever else you want to use it for. In addition to that, most universities, including ours, if you're offered a TA or an RA, teaching assistantship or research assistantship, you're also going to get your tuition and your health insurance covered as well. Okay. So that's something to note. And so when you're shopping around for universities, shopping around for a place that you want to go, when you're asking about funding, ask what kind of benefits come along with the teaching assistantship and the research assistantship. Okay. Um, One note here, and then I wanted to go over a few questions that you're going to want to ask folks when you're applying to different graduate schools. First of all, if you're applying for a PhD program, okay, the university should be offering you a teaching assistantship, a research assistantship, and or a fellowship. With fellowships, I'll talk about in a few minutes. But you should be getting an offer, a support offer. If you are not, my recommendation is not to accept the offer. Okay. It is the expectation that the university will pay you to get your PhD. So just keep that in mind. At NC State and at many other universities, there's not necessarily going to be a separate application for assistantships. Usually, when you apply, a faculty committee, the same faculty committee that's making a decision as to whether or not you're going to be admitted or that recommendation, will also decide what kind of funding you're going to get as well. Okay. Um, so questions you want to ask when you're talking to the director of graduate programs or the department at the university that's offering you this funding. Okay. First of all, of course, you want to know what is the stipend level, and are there benefits? And so you want to get the average stipend level. What can you expect your salary, I'll say, to be? The other very important thing, and I should have put it on this slide, is try to assess the value of that stipend level, and compare that with the cost of living for the area. Okay. So for example, here at NC State, you might get, if you're in engineering, let's say $36,000 per year, your tuition, your health insurance covered. That might go a little long way, here. But if you're going to NYU or a, university in a large city, it might be that $36,000 is not so much, and you're going to have trouble eating off $36,000. Probably not. 36 is pretty good, but at any rate, assess the value of that stipend. And one very good way to do that is not to check on the cost of living with someone like me or to look at U.S. News and World Report or Consumer Reports or wherever else. Talk to the graduate students. So at NC State and at most universities, you're going to find there are lots of student organizations. So here you would contact the president of the Graduate Student Association and ask if you can talk to a student in your field. So you can ask them other questions as well about the department, but also you can ask them, kind of like what kind of funding are they getting? Are they able to eat with that funding? Are they able to find, housing? So assess the value of that stipend. Another question you're going to want to ask is what happens after the first year. Okay, so generally speaking, when you're applying for a research-based master's or a PhD program, and you're offered funding, they're not going to cut you off, but never assume anything. Okay. You want to make sure that you cover yourself. It might be that there's a faculty member that, you have you're working on their research project, you're on a research assistantship, and they say, look, you're going to get 3 years of funding. And then after that third year, we're going to expect you to apply to NIH or to NSF or to, anywhere else to find your own funding. If that's the case, you want to know that in advance, and that should be part of the decision-making process when you're deciding whether or not to go there. It might be that's okay with you. It might be that's not okay with you, but it's something that you need to know in advance. The other thing you want to check out is whether or not fees are covered. So I said, let's say you get a great offer from NC State, you got your tuition, your health insurance covered. I didn't say anything about fees, right? So you want to ask, are the fees covered? And those would be things like you have to pay at every university, like your student services fee, gym fees, student organization fee, all those fees that are kind of buried into what you pay, per semester. If they're not offered, that's fine. You just need to know that in advance, so that you know whether or not to budget for it, or not. If you're applying to a college of engineering, including our own, you can expect to pay extra fees. So a lot of students in colleges of engineering, they're going to pay extra fees. So you want to make sure that you know whether or not that's going to be covered as well. The other question you're going to want to ask, if you're thinking about a master's, research-based master's, if you're thinking about a professional master's like the MBA, Masters of Accounting, Masters of Public Administration, you want to ask, how does the program make decisions on funding? I can tell you here at NC State, we emphasize the PhD more so than the master's students when it comes to funding. Okay. And so many programs do have funding for master's students, but it's not a given like it is for a PhD program. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have that, that you get that question answered. And that, that's the case at NC State. We're a large public research university. You might be applying to another, large, private research university where they fund all of their master's students, and that's very possible. And so you want to make sure that you ask that question as well. And by the way, I'm not going to talk about loans. I'm not going to talk about work study, financial need-based support that does exist, but I want to focus on assistantships and fellowships, and those are the things that you should be focusing on. But it doesn't mean that you should not fill out the FAFSA so you're eligible for need-based support. Okay. Now, when you're applying to graduate school, generally what's going to happen is you're going to be offered some combination of support. So it might be in the first year, you're offered a teaching assistantship. Second year, you're offered a research assistantship. Then you're going to get a fellowship. I'll talk about a fellowship in a second, or it might be the first year you get a fellowship, and then you're going to get assistantships the following years. The model varies from program to program and from university to university. A fellowship is basically the same thing as a scholarship. It's a non-service award. So whereas a TA and an RA, teaching assistantship, research assistantship, you're getting paid, you're getting compensated for work. That's not the case with a fellowship. You're going to graduate school full time, and you're getting paid to go to graduate school full time. Okay. And these will usually cover also a stipend for living expenses, tuition, and a lot of times they'll cover required fees as well. But again, as a question you're going to want to ask. Okay. A number of different characteristics of fellowships. First of all, at NC State and at many universities, to get any kind of funding at all, you need to be enrolled full time. Okay. You want to ask the question because I was actually giving a presentation at a conference on the same topic, basically, with another university. And I said that, and the person said, well, actually, at our university, part-time students are eligible for funding as well. Not at NC State, but and at many universities, is full-time is required, but you want to ask that question. Okay. Fellowships range anywhere from 1 to 6 years in duration. I would say the average is about 3. Look at the different qualifications for these and see if you're okay with that. Many of them are going to say that you cannot have any outside employment other than as like working as an intern, research assistantship, teaching assistantship, something that's directly related to your degree program. So you want to check that out. Many are going to have citizenship requirements as well, and are available only to U.S. citizens or permanent residents. Now, teaching assistantships, research assistantships, and many of our fellowships that we offer at NC State, citizenship doesn't actually matter. But what I'm going to talk about citizenship is really a lot, in many cases, for the nationally competitive ones that I'll discuss, that where you apply to an outside granting organization. Okay, but you want to check out that citizenship requirement anyways, and see if the funding is available to non-U.S. citizens. When you're applying for fellowships, they're generally going to be research specific, discipline specific, and about 99.9% of the cases, they're not going to be financial need based. They're going to be based on academic criteria, and your research experience, and merit criteria. So just bear that in mind. And also, when you're applying for fellowships, and I can go into more detail on any of this, and some of the next slides will, but some are going to be for students who are at or near the beginning of their program, or you would apply even before you've been admitted, and others are going to be at the very end of your program. So they might be funding, dissertation support. Okay. So 2 kinds of fellowships. Okay. And again, fellowships, basically the same thing as scholarships. Those are fellowships that are offered through your university, through the graduate school, through your department to you. Okay. And again, there's generally not going to be a separate application for these. And if there is a separate application, you will be notified, of that. When you apply to graduate school, unlike when you're applying to an undergraduate program, what happens is your application will go to my office, right? We'll send out that information to the faculty in the graduate programs. They're going to make a recommendation as to whether or not you're going to be admitted or not. And they're also going to make those decisions on funding as well. Okay. Sometimes you're going to find that there are university-wide fellowships that are offered by, the graduate school or your college. I administer many of the university-level fellowships at NC State. And so before you chat with your department, or you're invited to a recruiting weekend and you're talking to them about whether or not you're going to accept, do your homework, check out the graduate school website, see what kind of funding they have. Many times you can't apply for some of that funding directly, but your department can nominate you for that funding. So you can always check with, when you're talking to them, you can say, can you put me in the back of your mind as someone to nominate for whatever kind of funding is available at the university level. Deadlines, again, they're about the same as the graduate application deadlines because there's not a separate application. You may find some graduate programs that do have an earlier deadline for anyone who's interested in funding. And so that's something to keep in mind, but usually it's the same deadline. Okay. Nationally competitive portable fellowships are those that are offered directly by a granting agency or foundation. And then if you're awarded the fellowship, you can take it to any university to which you're admitted or are enrolled. Okay. So instead of being awarded from the university to you, it's awarded from an outside granting agency to you. Okay. So one example would be the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, program. Fellowship. There are thousands of these offered. I have some websites you can go to in a bit, but NSF is a good one. Department of Energy, NASA, NIH, lots of organizations, nonprofit foundations. I put the NSF website, up there, and for when they have their next competition. And I've been a reviewer for the NSF fellowship, and I can answer questions on that if you'd like as well, from my perspective as a reviewer on that. But the deadlines for these are very, very early. So for 2025-26, many of those deadlines have already passed. They started in about October of 2024, and they're going to range until about this month. Not to say that all of them have passed, but the majority have passed. They're a good academic year ahead of schedule. Many times when you apply, as with NSF, because they actually have one of the earlier deadlines, it might be that you haven't even applied to graduate school yet, and that's okay. Generally, they're going to ask you where you're planning on applying. And by the way, they will use the logic of where you're applying as one criterion in the selection. So they're going to look at it and say, is this a logical place where you're applying? That is, do you have a rationale as to why you're applying to, if you're interested in civil engineering, we have a great civil engineering program at NC State, and you'd want to talk about, not only that you're applying to NC State civil engineering, but why that's a good fit for you. So I don't want to emphasize that too much, but the deadlines are very, very early, and you don't want to miss them because they are almost never extended. Here are some websites, and by the way, Heba, I can forward this presentation to anyone who's interested
Awesome. Thank
as
you so
well. So you
much.
have some, yeah. So you can have some websites here. The one where the university does require is actually pays for it, and I'm not sure if UCF does or not. Maybe they do. Is the SPIN database. It's a really good database that we actually subscribe to. But all of these are really good. I have a website through the graduate school where I also have links to other universities that happen to have good websites. You can Google. It might be UCF also has a. Not sure if you have like a university fellowship office at NC State. We have a fellowship office that helps students to find support. They might have good resources. Always check with your advisor and your faculty. They might know very specific ones for your discipline that are not that are going to be harder to find on these very general databases. Okay, but these are some really good resources. Thousands of nationally competitive fellowships are available. Okay. Um, and if you missed out on taking a picture again, I will go ahead and forward that I'll forward the presentation. Selection criteria, and some of this is going to be about the same as when you're applying to graduate school. Okay. They're going to look at your grade point average. They're going to look at that holistically, not only the bottom line GPA, but how you did in your major, how you did in the courses that are consistent, what kind of courses you took and whether or not they're going to qualify you to do well in the graduate program. Sometimes they'll look at GREs, sometimes they won't. Most of the time they won't. In my opinion, they shouldn't, but sometimes they do. Keep that in mind when you're applying to graduate programs. In some cases, a graduate program like at NC State, university requirement is not for we don't require the GRE at the university level. Many departments do. But it might be that if a department does not require the GRE and there's this fellowship you just really want to apply for and they require it, you'll still need to take the GRE. So just keep that in mind. Not the most important part of your application, nor should it be. Research experience, internships, things outside of the classroom, that is what's going to get you the fellowship. That's what's going to get you into graduate school. Things outside of the classroom. So many of you might have already started doing undergraduate research over the summer. Maybe you have done research at University of Central Florida during the academic year. Maybe if you're applying for a professional degree program like an MBA, you've gotten some good work experience, internships. Those are the things, that are really going to help you to get into graduate school. And if you don't find like a formal research opportunity, like I have a website there, nsf.gov, then the /REU there. That's a database of thousands of summer research experiences all over the country. Create your own. Walk up to a faculty member at UCF and say, "Look, I'm really interested in what your project that you're working on. Is there any way that I can contribute to this in some way and learn from you from working with you on this project?" You never know if they might say yes. If they say no, really, who cares, right? You have nothing to lose, and you have everything to gain just by being proactive and asking the question. When I was at UNC Chapel Hill a long, long time ago, that's what I did. And I ended up working with a faculty member there, a professor that I knew, and I got good research experience, and I got a really good letter of reference out of it as well, which you're also going to need, by the way, for the fellowship applications and also for graduate school applications. Any kind of publications, honors, awards, those are all good things, if you're a McNair, Student Support Services, any kind of those programs, I mean, that's definitely a plus. You want to mention that. Most undergraduates do not have publications. So if you don't have a publication, don't stress over it, right? But I can tell you from reviewing for NSF, the undergraduate students that did have publications, they went to the top of my stack pretty much immediately. Okay. Because that's something that most undergrads don't have. And it says a lot about you and about your motivation if you've worked with a faculty member on a publication. Conference presentations. There are professional conferences you should go to. McNair. I'll also be at the National Conference of Undergraduate Research in next week, I think, or the week after. Maybe it was next week or the week after. I can't remember exactly. That's in Pittsburgh. So go to, conference presentations are also used to help evaluate you for these programs, in part because again, it shows motivation. It shows that you're going to, motivated and you're passionate about the discipline. And we're looking for someone who's passionate about what they're planning on doing in their future career goals, whatever those might be. Okay. When you're at these conferences, you want to try to make a presentation, but also just on the side, if you're not making a presentation, that's fine too. Network with others. Don't sit with other people from UCF. Sit with people that you don't know because you never know who your future colleague or collaborator is going to be. Excellent, outstanding, glowing, beautiful letters of reference. Okay, really important. And those should be from faculty, preferably who know your work well. If there's a funding program that supports students in a professional program like the MBA, there's not as many of those, by the way, as for like research-based degree programs, but they would look at it, it's fine to get someone you did an internship with to write that letter, or someone that was your supervisor to write the letter, as long as they can attest to your ability to succeed in graduate school and what you were doing is directly related to your degree program. Otherwise, you should really plan on getting faculty to write those letters of references. And when you're applying to different fellowships, especially the externally funded fellowships, when you're looking at the different criteria for selection and you're going to be addressing those in your application, share those with the person that's writing the reference so that they can also integrate that information within that letter of reference. So, for example, National Science Foundation, they require that you address intellectual merit, academic abilities, and broader impacts, the impacts of your research, whether or not you've done any outreach or had impact beyond that research. And so it's good for the letter writers to address broader impacts and intellectual merit for the NSF application because that's what that particular program's looking for. Okay. You're usually going to be required to write an essay of some sort. I'm calling it a statement of purpose or personal statement. It can be a statement of interest, called a lot of different things. What you want to do with these are tailor it to the program goals. There are some programs that are going to be looking to see whether or not you're just an outstanding researcher. There are some that are going to be looking to see if you're a researcher and have, leadership experience. Take a look at what their program goals are and tailor that statement of purpose around that. I can give a whole, I also give a workshop on applying to graduate school, and this is also important for when you're applying to graduate programs as well, is to tailor that statement of purpose to the graduate program that you're applying to. Your audience, for NSF is going to be faculty, administrators, folks in your area generally. Like I reviewed for the social sciences, it might not be, that I'm familiar with everything that everyone is doing. Let's say in sociology or psychology, my area is political science. And so keep in mind, know what your audience would be, because in some cases, and you can usually find out on the website or you can contact them. It might be that if you're applying for, a fellowship that's specifically for people in chemical engineering, they have a bunch of chemical engineers that are looking at your application, in which case you can probably get a little bit technical, when you're talking about your research. In a case where it's a variety of folks that are in a broad area, lots of different areas in engineering, lots of areas in the social sciences, in that particular case, you want to make sure that you talk in terms that anyone in that field can understand. Very, very, very importantly, if there's a page limit, font restrictions, comply with those. Be sure to comply. If you don't, the reviewers won't even get a chance to look at your application. If you are one sentence, if it's 2 pages limit, and because you converted to a PDF and you're using a Word file and it went one sentence over on a third page, your whole application could easily be just tossed, right? So you want to make absolutely sure that you comply with those. If there are font restrictions, I wouldn't try to, make it, if it's 12 point, don't try to make it like 11.75 or something like that. Make sure that you comply with those. There are obviously programs that take a look to see whether or not you're compliant, and they genuinely won't review them if if you don't comply with such requirements. Okay. As I mentioned, just wanted to highlight this one more time. You need those excellent letters of reference. And I won't repeat everything that I just said. But one thing is, when you're asking faculty or when you're asking others to write those letters, you want to make sure that they can write you a strong, detailed letter of reference and ask them in those words. Can you write me a strong, detailed letter of reference, right? Having done this for a very long time, I've seen some letters that recommend the students not get funding. I've seen some that are one paragraph long that clearly indicates that the professor or the supervisor, whomever, really has no clue who the student actually is. So be sure to get folks that kind of know you, okay, and that can write you a detailed letter. Give them plenty of time. Give them, a list or information on all those fellowships that you're applying for, all those graduate programs you're applying for. Give them your resume, CV, statement of interest. Meet with them. Give them all the ammunition they need to write those strong letters, because it's basically, your faculty advisors writing to their colleagues saying, yes, they're vouching for you, saying, yep, this person's a good investment. This person should get funding. This person should get into the graduate school. So it's really important that you get those very, very, very strong letters of reference if they're required for the fellowships, with many times they are. Only a few more slides to go, then I'm going to open things up to questions. Tips on applying. These are, just very general things, and then I can answer more detailed questions in a few minutes. Just be sure to read the application package carefully and complete all of the sections. So just answer things completely. If it's asking for your research experiences, talk about all your research experiences, what you've done. I've seen, sometimes people kind of don't go into as much detail as they should. What I like to see are, detailed answers. And sometimes what I like to see as well, to kind of go on a tangent for a second, would be, why are you so interested in a particular field of study? Why are you so interested in this, in applying for this particular fellowship program? I'm looking for why you're motivated. And so if you have a particular story as to why you're interested in, biomedical engineering, for example, if something happened in your family or in your life that sparked an interest in this, I'd want to know that. If you've always done research in this area for forever, I'd want to know that as well. When you're reviewing a lot of fellowship applications, there are a lot of fellowship applications, and sometimes it's hard to remember the details about everyone. What usually happens is you'll read all the applications, you'll rate them, and then you're going to go into a committee where you're going to review all of them and discuss them. And so if someone, has a very brief story, not a long story, but just like a few sentences that really catches my attention as to why they're interested in a certain area, then when we're in committee, I can say, oh, this is the person who did this. This is the person who did that. And that'll help us to remember your application, just FYI. Make them neat in appearance, easy to read. I mentioned the font restrictions. I'm a little bit older, and so sometimes I'm not wearing my glasses right now just because I can't see the computer screen with my glasses, and I can't anyway. I have trouble seeing. So make sure that you have, you don't try to make, even if it's allowed, that you don't make the font microscopic and you leave spacing in between the lines. Make things easy to read. Or else you'll frustrate the reviewers. If you're applying to multiple fellowships, that's great. I would recommend you apply to multiple fellowships. It may be, depending on the rules and regulations, you cannot accept all of them, but you want to be in that position. So be sure to do that. So make a checklist, set a timeline. Each of these are going to take quite a bit of time. Talk to successful applicants. I'm sure that there are lots of them at your university, and you can ask them what they did to be successful, successfully receive the fellowship. Just remember the deadlines. Again, I'll repeat it, October to March. And what I would always recommend that you do is apply just a few days earlier than the deadline, just in case there's a technical glitch or something like that. That's clearly not your fault. It still might be that your application is not accepted, even though it's not your fault. Okay. So I've seen that happen as well before, and it's kind of unfortunate when it happens. So apply a few days early, and that way you can kind of, address any technical difficulties with applying. Okay. Um, this is my information. This is not a talk about NC State University. It's a talk about funding. If you have more questions on this topic, I'm happy to help out. You can always email me and ask me. But I always recommend, using the resources that are right in front of you as well. The staff in your current programs, your advisor, faculty, talk to the folks in your prospective graduate program as well. Um, Questions on things. I left quite a bit of time for questions because I know that I left a lot of gaps there, kind of on purpose. So I will open it up, and I can go to oops.
Students, if you have any questions like Dr. Schaefer mentioned, this is your time to ask. So feel free to unmute your mic or drop them in the chat.
Yep. And I'm going to take a quick drink of water first. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's the first one, but I think it is. It's the niche to everyone. Okay, I'm gonna do that one. If I've missed you, maybe Heba, just let me know. I'm not trying to ignore anyone here.
That is the first one. You're
That
right.
is a okay. In regards to receiving letters of recommendation, what's your perspective on situations where the students inquire to their mentors for such and are told to write a draft letter, full letter, series of achievements, skills learned from, yeah, achievements, skills. So if you're asked to help them to write the letter, that's okay. I mean, because what they're looking for is not for you to be recommending yourself. What they're asking for is that ammunition that they can use, within that letter. It has to be very detailed, has to really clearly demonstrate that you're a good fit with the graduate program, that you're a good fit with that particular fellowship program. And so if that's what they're asking you to do, I would go ahead and do that. And then they can fill on the gaps as to, well, you're in the top 0.05% of all the students that I've ever known and in electrical engineering, and they can fill in those gaps for you. But that's part of giving them the ammunition that they need to write that letter. Many times they won't actually do that, but sometimes they do. So you're absolutely right. Did it answer your question? Ah, cool. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Other questions? And I know you're going to get a workshop on it, but if you have questions I'm assistant dean in the graduate school, so I can answer questions on making yourself competitive for graduate school too. This is good. It's good to get as many perspectives on that as possible. Um, Other questions?
Dr. Schaefer, so I have a question.
Yes.
It looks like, do we have one? Oh, we do have one in the chat. Let's go ahead and take
Uh,
Victoria's first. So she is saying, what are the most important things someone needs to do when they start their senior year if they plan on applying to grad school at the end of their senior year and have no research experience so far?
Yeah. So if you don't have any research experience so far, you're in the same boat as a lot of folks. Again, be proactive. I mean, what kind of are you applying? Tell me about, are you applying for a research-based master's program or PhD program? Is that what you're applying for? Um, I can't really see your responses, so I think it's going directly to.
Alrighty, let's go ahead and
But
see.
that's okay. I can address it based on the answer being yes for that. Um, so, if you don't have any research experience, be proactive. There are lots of faculty at your current university that would be more than happy to work with you, very likely. So walk up to them, ask if you can assist them with their work, and get that experience. So you can create those experiences for yourself. If you're at the very beginning of your senior year, then you have some time to do that. In some clinical psychology master's program. Okay, waiting to yeah. So if it's clinical psychology, that's not my area, but same thing. Try to get some experience, research experience in that area, or if you have internship experience within being you know in clinical psychology, that's a good thing as well. So try to get as much of that experience as possible. The other option, I used to run what's called a post-bac program. And so what that does is a program that's provides you with research experience or maybe some coursework that's in between your bachelor's degree and your PhD or your master's or whatever you're going into. And so that's another way to get experience if you have not been able to get that as an undergraduate. And so many students do participate in what's called a post-bac program. You can ask, your program staff about those. We don't have those. I used to run a very large one at NC State. It was funded by NSF, and I ran out of funding for that a few years ago. But that's something you'd want to check into at different universities to see whether or not they have that type of funding available. And also one more thing to mention, play up your strengths too. So if you've done if you don't have any research experience, talk about any, honors that you've received, talk about any kind of big research projects that you worked on, even for a class, and how that gave you the skills that you're going to need to succeed in the graduate program. I mean, use what you have, use what you have for that. And don't
Right.
sell yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, and also one more thing. Many of you all, as freshmen, sophomores, wanted to do one thing. You've changed your mind and, are planning on doing something totally different for graduate school. And you've done, internships or research experiences when you first started your undergrad program. Even if those are completely different from what you're going into, don't shortchange yourself. They're still very, very valuable to include in your CV and your statement of purpose. Because what you'd want to argue, and what's very easy to argue actually, is that even though they're different research areas or the internships in a totally different area that you're planning on going to, you gain valuable skills that are translatable to what you're going to be doing and will still help you to be successful in graduate school.
Dr. Schaefer, you answered our next question. We had a student who is wondering, would volunteer experience be highly considered, or is that something
Yep.
less important? So I'm happy that, that is something that should be showcased. Even if it's not relevant, it's still experience and it can still go a long way.
It can go a long way. The skills you've gained are translatable. And by the way, if you're applying for the NSF, National Science Foundation Fellowship, they look at broader impacts. In addition to intellectual merit, broader impacts would be any kind of volunteer service that you've done, any kind of outreach. Have you tutored students in the sciences? Have you talked about your field of study at the local, museum, things like that, any kind of outreach. So there's some fellowships that are going to look at that, in particular, actually. Um, how letters, do you provide samples or links to examples of how letters should be formatted? I don't do that. However, when people ask me if I can review their statement of purpose for a fellowship, generally speaking, I say yes, to it. So I'm sure there are folks at University of Central Florida that, would do that as well. But simply ask others to take a look at it, for you. What I recommend, I actually, for a statement of purpose, what you want to demonstrate are really two things. One would be your potential to succeed in graduate school, those academic criteria, and also two, your fit or your match with the graduate program or with the fellowship. Those are really the two things you want to address. The other thing you want to do when you're formatting that letter is just assume, okay, maybe not is not the case, but just assume when you're applying to graduate school or applying to fellowships that those reviewers are skimming your applications. Okay, they're skimming things. They might not be doing that, but if you assume that, what that means to you is put the most important things first. Highlight important things, underline them, literally. Make sure that we see, those accomplishments that you've had. So no, I don't actually have that, but I'm sure someone at your university does. And again, get folks like me to review it. It doesn't hurt to ask. I mean, if I have time, I almost always will do it. One more, oh, as it pops in my mind, something else popped in my mind. As you're writing your statement of purpose, your essay, one thing that's important that I get this question a lot, don't be modest. Okay. This is your opportunity to sell yourself. Talk about, why we should select you for the graduate program, why you should receive this particular fellowship, but do not be modest. And always ask someone else to take a look at that statement of purpose or essay to see how you're coming across. Okay. They're not only going to look at whether or not you have a typo, grammatical error, things like that, but also they can take a look and see how do they interpret what you've written, you know? And so whether or not if you're nervous that you think that you were because Dr. Schaefer said don't be modest and you're bragging too much about yourself, they'll be able to tell you, how you come across. Is the slide deck available to us as a PDF? I'll forward it to Heba after this. It's available as a PowerPoint. I suppose you can probably just convert it
Wonderful. Yes, I will share it out. Thank you so
into a
much for that.
PDF. For CVs, is there an order? That's a whole workshop. So you probably want to, it might be that you're offered a workshop. Let's see, when you're applying for a research position and they ask you for a CV, and you list the research experience at the top versus volunteering. Yeah. So tailor it to the program. I mean, when you're putting together everything that you've done, and just a little, if you've done a internship somewhere, maybe a few sentences about what you've done in the internship. If you've done a research experience, what you've done in the research experience. And then, by the way, when you're writing your statement of purpose, you don't just want to regurgitate that, but you want to talk about, I did this research experience. I've had this job experience or internship. Here are the skills that I've gained from it. So talk about the impact of that in your statement of purpose. But the answer to your question is yes. I mean, you do want to tailor it to where you're applying in that, talk about the things that are most important to that particular program. So in one case, it might be that they're really looking for leadership experience and volunteer experience. In that case, yeah, move things around and let them see that first. If they're looking for research experience, you can move things around. And emphasize the research experience. But you can move things around in your statement depending on where you're applying, for school, to school or to a fellowship. Good questions for me. And one pointer, maybe all of you are probably beyond this, but just in case, if you're entering school as a freshman or whatever time you start, as you do things, always start putting them in your CV. Just have a file on your computer, put anything that you do that you think even could remotely be put in your CV, in your draft CV. And even if some of that stuff is deleted later on or moved around or isn't important, at least you have all of that ammunition ready to go. If you're like me, I mean, I'm not going to remember what I did, if I last month, for example, and if I put it in that draft CV, then I'll have those accomplishments, there, and then I can manipulate it later on. So keep track of everything that you do, even if you might think that it's not important at the time. It might very well be important depending on the particular program that you're applying to.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Schaefer. We also have a student asking, I'm planning on being very proactive on talking with my advisor on a
Mhm.
plan for a path to graduate school, applying to do volunteer work, getting research experience, and studying for the GRE in the first half my senior year of undergrad. Is that a good plan of action, or is there other things I should be doing that could be of help?
Yeah, I mean, getting is, uh, yes, all the different research experience is really important. Any kind of more, anything else you can get as long, is for your any kind of work experience you can get. But basically, what you'd want to do is to take a look at those different universities to which you're applying, right? See what they are looking for. And then you can tailor whatever else you're missing, around that, So if they're looking for X, Y, and Z, then you want to make sure that you get those experiences in your senior year. One way to do that, and what I always recommend when students apply for a PhD program is contact the graduate program to which they're applying directly and have a chat with them, especially if you're thinking about, a particular professor that you want to work with. Contact that faculty member in advance, and talk to them about what they're looking for, and talk to them about that and what other, it might be that I've found some students think that they're not qualified at all, and it turns out that they really have everything they need to get into the graduate program. Talk to the faculty about that. To go off on a very slight 1 minute tangent is, you want to make preliminary contact with the faculty with whom you want to work in the graduate programs that you're applying to. Couple reasons. One, again, they're making the decisions on your application. And two, you want to see if you get along with them. If at all possible, to go to your question about, this might be for between your junior and senior year, more so than your question. If you have the opportunity to do summer research at the university to which you're planning on applying, do that, because the faculty are the ones that are making those decisions on who to recommend for their graduate programs and for their programs. If you're working with those faculty and you get along with them, and you do good work in their lab, that might help you to get into their graduate program. I also used to run a really large undergraduate summer research program here at NC State, and many students got into NC State just because they were in that program, because the faculty got a chance to know them. So maybe that's the very long-winded, answer to your question. As far as studying for the GRE, I always recommend that you do study for it. It might be you find that many of the departments don't actually require it. You might want to find that out in advance. But whether or not you test well or don't test well, just know that it's not the most important part of your application. Um, and if I haven't answered that question, then let me know.
Awesome, Dr. Schaefer. Thank you so much. And thank you, Megan, for sharing such a helpful tip. She noted that she keeps a Google
Yes,
document to sort her awards, volunteer hours, certificates, and
perfect.
everything. And that is a great tip. And I'm sure, Dr. Schaefer, you can agree with that.
No question at all. That's a great, great idea.
Yes. At this time, I just wanted to again say thank you so much for coming out and, sharing such valuable insights for our students and students.
Um,
We hope you were able to take a lot away from today's session. Dr. Schaefer, would you be able to drop in your email if students have any additional questions?
yep. Um,
Awesome.
there it is, right
Thank
there.
you so much. So students, if you have any additional questions for Dr. Schaefer, please feel free to reach out. And before you all head out, I kindly ask that you take a moment to fill out AP's post-event survey, another indicator for your attendance today. We hope everyone had a chance to fill out the QR code to check in. And if you haven't done so, I'll go ahead and put it again in the chat. This is again to mark your attendance for today's session. And then also note that AP is here to support you every step of the way. So if you have any questions whatsoever, we are here to help you on your journey to seeking an advanced degree. I'll go ahead and drop our email as well as our link tree, so you all can stay connected with us. And again, thank you students for joining in, and thank you, Dr. Schaefer, again. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
My pleasure. Everyone have a great day. And thank you, Heba.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.